Hey guys, Fake Rooster here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about Halo Infinite's campaign. I finally got round to playing it the other day, or some of it anyway. I wanted to give you guys my first thoughts and impressions. The main question we're going to be focusing on is, does Halo Infinite work as an open world game? The answer to that question, I think, for me, is yes. Now, I will say this about it. I went in excited more than anything to have a new Halo game. I wasn't really thinking about the implications of what an open world Halo would actually mean in terms of gameplay all that much. It was there in the back of my mind, but I was excited to get hands on with a new Halo campaign. Now, I will say that for my first few hours, I really did enjoy the game. I think the graphics in this version of Halo are phenomenal. I think there are points in the game where you're just walking around, going to the next objective, and you just have to stop and have a good look around at the atmosphere because they've really nailed that classic Halo aesthetic combined with the idea of a more modern game with more modern mechanics, with that open world set of rules as well, which we'll get onto in a little bit. To be honest, my biggest concern was, will this game feel like a Halo game? Because there has been a slight disconnect. Even as someone that enjoyed Halo 5, there was a slight disconnect between what we expect the standard Spartan to be able to do with, cinematic gameplay. Because what we got with Halo 5 was phenomenal gameplay wise, but it didn't really feel like a Halo title. You could fly around, you could dive bomb, you could do all this kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I think that was a fun game, but I am glad to be slightly more boots on the ground. Although there are some really cool abilities that they've incorporated without losing that boots on the ground, that core Halo experience, such as the grapple hook. Now, the grapple hook in multiplayer is really fun, and in single player, guess what? It's also really fun. But the thing with the single player is it becomes a lot more useful, especially when it comes to traversing the map. If you upgrade some of the later grapple hook upgrades that you can do, then you're actually able to climb mountains and things no problem, which makes traveling to objectives and things a little bit easier and take a lot less time than having to fast travel to a forward operating base and spawn a vehicle in and drive. So it gives you a lot of opportunity. It's really cool for hijacking vehicles. If you become under attack by ghosts or banshees or whatever, you can just hijack them no problem and use them to take out the enemies, which is really fun. And one of the things that the open world element of the game has really opened up is that sense of scale. You really feel like you're in a living, breathing ring where, there are banished everywhere that can pop out and potentially kill you. And, it's really, really fun for that kind of gameplay. And you're not confined to, you must walk down this lane to get to this objective. You can choose so many different ways of achieving some of the objectives. And of course, with it being an open world game, you do have that little bit of side mission and main mission. Side missions pretty fun. There isn't thousands of them, so you don't feel like you're going across a massive map like you would in a Ubisoft game, for example. But there's enough there to keep your interest. You can go and rescue soldiers. You can go and look for relics and collectibles, and you can even unlock things for multiplayer, which is kind of a nice touch to kind of connect the multiplayer a wee bit with the campaign. I would have liked to have seen an armor set or something like that, some sort of exclusive armor set that you can only get for playing the campaign. But you've got to remember that unless you've got Game Pass, you are paying money. You're paying, your 50 quid for the campaign or whatever it is, and multiplayer isn't included in that because it's free to play. So it would have been nice to get a little bit more bang for your buck, as it were, and maybe get some sort of exclusive Master Chief style armor or something like that that you could use in the multiplayer. But still, like I say, it is really nice to have that slight connection where you can get some cool camos for your weapons and vehicles and armor in multiplayer. I did mention the grapple hook. You've also got the drop wall, which in single player is much wider and more useful. It's useful especially against jackal snipers, and yes, jackal snipers are equally as annoying. Even on normal, they have kicked my ass many times where they seem to notice that your shields have gone and all decide to shoot at you, which is fair enough. But there is a bit of that. So when it comes to me playing on harder difficulties, which is usually an after I beat the game thing for me, but when it comes to those harder difficulties, I think they're really going to be a pain. I mean, even if you look at the legendary difficulty, it does say for fans of Jackal Snipers. So 343 really know what they're doing with that, and they're teasing you a wee bit about that. So the drop wall is useful to protect against them. You've got the sensor node things, which again are really useful, particularly when you're getting onto some of those bounties. Now that is another one of the side missions you can do in this game, is there are certain banished forces that are more valuable and have cool weapons which you can collect throughout the campaign and use throughout the campaign, which you get by killing those enemies. So that's pretty fun. You pop up a couple of those sensor node things, you can see their size of their force, where the HVT is, and you can take them out. And it is kind of cool. It does remind me a lot of Destiny. Maybe they have been fans of Bungie after they left the Halo franchise to take over Destiny, but some of those boss battles do feel a bit like that, in that there's a big group of enemies, there's an elite enemy you've got to go and kill, and it's up to you how you do it. So it's very Destiny-esque, which is fine. It's a cool feature in a Halo game we've not really had before. I don't think it detracts from the gameplay. I think it leads to some pretty fun gameplay. I mean, there was one Jackal Sniper in particular that was an HVT, so I just found a rise, got up there with a grapple hook and just sniped him in one hit. That was very satisfying. It felt a bit more like a Hitman game maybe, but it was really cool, hunting those bounties down. And they're always really interesting fights. I don't think they're ever really boring. I think 343 have really nailed, they're all slightly varied, slightly different vehicles or weapons or whatever, which is really cool. Now, in terms of the main campaign, you have got a couple of ways you can play that. You can either just power through the main campaign and only do them, and there's actually an achievement to do that in under 8 hours. Or you can take your time, like I'm doing, get some of the side stuff. You unlock a forward operating base. You then have a vision of where all the collectibles are. You go and collect them. Like, you're leveling up your Spartan cores, which helps you upgrade your grapple loop and things. You see them, you go and collect them, and then you go and do the mission. So I'm not sure if there's maybe a difficulty spike if you're not collecting upgrades. I'd imagine there would be, but that's been kind of a fun element. As for the campaign itself, it feels phenomenal. I mean, you're seeing some footage on screen just now of the campaign. You can really see the beauty in the design of the levels. You can really see the variety in weapons and fighting the various enemies and things like that. I don't want to go too much into spoiler territory. I know there is some spoilers probably in this video, but I don't want to go too hard into the story and talk about that just yet. My plan there is to beat the game and then maybe give a little bit of a spoiler review of what I thought of the story as a whole in general. But it performs beautifully, and I think the open world element adds a refresh to the Halo design, where it's open world but it's not ridiculous. I think if they'd gone a bit too far and made the map a bit too big, giving you way too many optional objectives, it would feel more like a chore. But I think this is a great introduction into the next chapter of Halo, because they have said that Infinite does represent the next chapter, and they'll be adding to this game in the future and things like that as well. So it's been really fun exploring a type of ring we haven't had before, one that's under construction, that isn't quite finished, that's damaged. So that's added some really unique gameplay opportunities as well. There's sometimes you'll just drive a Warthog off the wrong cliff and that's it. But it's been really, really fun, a real joy to kind of play and get hands on. The weapons in the campaign as well are really cool. We've got all the classic weapons you'd expect. It's really nice to be walking around a beautiful Halo installation with the Halo 2 battle rifle. That's really cool. And you get all the weapons that are in the multiplayer. There are a few surprises. As I say, you are getting some really good weapons off of boss battles in those sort of bounty hunts, which are really cool. But generally speaking, there's a consistency here. There are variants of weapons which are amazing. I mean, we got a lot of weapon variants in Halo 5's multiplayer in the was it called Warzone? I think it was called Warzone. The Warzone game mode, where you got those cool variants, and I think they would have been better in a campaign, so it's cool to kind of see some variants like that in the campaign as well. Again, this is another one of what's becoming Fake Rooster's famous unscripted random rambling about video game video, so I just wanted to give my thoughts that generally I'm having a really good time. This is one of the more fun Halo campaigns I think I've played. This is much better than the way that Halo 5 was portrayed. I think this is Halo in essence. There's nothing really else to say about it. It is Halo to its core, and it's great to be back in that classic feeling. And I said this about the multiplayer. It's nice to have a game developer from a long running franchise still be able to capture that magic. It's really refreshing compared to some other titles that are struggling with that a wee bit this year, in particular. But that's about it for today, guys. Let me know in the comments below your feelings about the game, if you're enjoying it as much as I am. If you've any critiques or anything like that, that would be interesting to see as well. Consider subscribing. You'll see a lot more videos again, mostly focusing on Halo and Battlefield just now. And I hope you guys stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.